very pleased to be here. Thank you for your welcome.
Please tell everybody exactly where you are, your full name. I don't like butchering people's names, so I won't even try. And tell us your age and share your story with us this afternoon.
All right. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I'm 65, although I tend to lie and say I'm much younger, but it is a lie. And my life is being a children's author. It's the thing that drives everything I do, because kids have huge mouths. They always talk and get into trouble, but they actually have no experience to navigate the world. And through story and through books and writing for them, I give them people and partners that they can walk with in a complex world. So that's really what drives my writing.
So what's inspired you to start writing for children?
Well, really, it's just plain old trauma. My parents were refugees from Hungary and from war and communism, and they went through the actual normal tragedies. I use the word normal, it seems so strange. Tragedies of war. And normal tragedy of war. And they escaped, were in refugee camps and came to Australia. They didn't know what Australia was and they couldn't speak English.
Which part of Australia is that?
Well, when they landed in a refugee camp in Perth, and then they came to Sydney. Okay. And that's where we live. Oh. And my parents missed their home, of course, but it was a different world that they had escaped from. And they were very, very grateful to be in Australia because it offered democracy and a chance to rebuild their lives. Mm. But as a second generation child of refugees, it's as though the trauma is passed on. And I was always aware of war. It was like a silent traveller in my home. They never spoke about it because they wanted to protect their children. But this problem is kids are smart. Mm. They know everything. And by hiding it, you actually committed a crime against them because it brought fear. So I was always writing and reading. I didn't know I'd be a writer. But when my beloved father died, and I loved him more than anything in the world, he left me with the gift. I couldn't recover from the sadness of his death. And I started to write stories of him, of growing up, until I mutated into an author. Oh. Again, it was just such an extraordinary thing to do. And, you know, I speak to hundreds of thousands of kids all across Australia, across America. I've been to Istanbul, to Kiribati, to everywhere, speaking to young people and teachers and adults about the power of story to give them succor. You know, children are so afraid today. Yeah. I was at a school and a little boy, 12, stands up and he says to me, "Susanne, I don't want to ever grow up." And I said, "But why? Why?" And he said, "Because there's war and they're scared of climate change." Oh. And he just, and you know, that is a 12-year-old child who has really lost hope in many ways in our adult
at an early age.
And it's earlier than that. Oh. I see the children feel so deeply, but through story which focuses on them and emotional engagement with real people and characters, they begin to develop their own pathways towards navigating this world. Wow. So, you know, when they face power abuse, which is the normal thing of all children, be it bullying or war, they go into my books and they suddenly know they're not alone. Oh, and there's a way forward and they're empowered. And I'm hoping through my stories that I empower the young people to be warriors for justice so that they're not disempowered. And they can and will change our world bit by bit.
They are the next generation, and you're so right. The more aware they are of the mistakes that we have made, the more aware they are of the power that they have to change the world.
And you know, children just, they're so powerless. They are so powerless. And it is such a privilege to be able to speak to them and share. When I talk to kids, you always know the kid with the big issue. They wait till everyone goes out and you find a little person standing next to you. They're looking up and they want to share something. And often it's really dark secrets. Often they're reaching out to me because they trust me, because they think they know me because they've read my books. So they think I know them, and they will pass on the issues of their lives. And I have an opportunity to make a difference. Like one little boy came up and he said, what happens if you don't have a mum? And I said, well, you have a dad. So what happens if your dad is away at work a lot? And I said, well, you need to talk to him. And then he said, but I have a little brother and I love my little brother.
Oh.
But my little brother is mad. And I said, what do you mean? He said, oh, my mother has been on drugs and she doesn't live with us. And this 10-year-old child is looking after his 3-year-old drug-affected little brother while his father goes to work. And he came to me to tell because he needed to know another adult cared. And I gave him my books, of course, and we hugged, although we're not allowed, but I had to hug him because he had to, well, they had to know that we do care. And I then, of course, spoke to the librarian and said that boy's in trouble and they are getting a counsellor. That was a little American boy. I speak all over the world. But children are given the power to talk because adults do all their adult madness, be it divorce or whatever they're doing.
Yes.
But kids are there and they're on that journey and they deserve respect.
And they're just caught in the crossfire of our stuff without choice, without a voice, without, the powerlessness must be frustrating.
It's more than frustrating. In Australia, we have the highest youth male suicide in the world, and that is not good enough. You know, when I write my teen books, my young adult books, you know, I suck out my children's lives. I don't know if they appreciate it, but I'm the biggest spy. I listen. I want to find out what's going on. And I sort of write stories which are really grounded in truth. And I am sad that young males cannot speak. It's too risky. They're developing their sense of self. What happens if they say the truth and their friends, you know, identify them as weak or they're silent and they've got things to do. They've got to please their parents or achieve their dreams or what? Their great journeys of growing up, the great journeys, and they are often locked in silence. And they have no experience. And when they find a crisis, a girl leaves them. Their groups identifies them as barring them, you know?
Yeah.
There's no way out and they die. And I do not want them to die. And I write for them so they see there's a way out.
Yeah, a lot of young boys, because the show of emotion is perceived as a sign of weakness, will keep a lot of stuff in and not share it.
You know, imagine, like I was speaking one librarian who was in year 10, which took year 10 boys, which were 16-year-old boys, and they read this book I'd written, The Cave, which, as I said, I did suck out my son's life. And some of it was a bit, you know what boys are like. I mean, they're funny and they have deep hearts, but they're pretty gross. Anyway, so I suck out it, right, the life. And she said they read it in a class text. And she said she had been teaching these boys for 4 years and she never knew their stories, because through the avenue of a novel that feels real to them, they are released. They can speak, and they can share in a safe place.
Oh, how wonderful. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. So what advice would you give parents with kids, particularly boys, based on your work and your life experience? What advice would you give to any parent?
All right. This is really serious. This is advice I believe in, and I know it works. Firstly, before they become teenagers, you have to listen to them. We adults do everything for our kids, but we actually don't listen to them. We're so busy getting them their dinner and, having our careers and looking after everything. We can't hear them. And it's easy to hear them if you set aside time, not to have a big discussion, which they hate, but I'm talking about going for a walk, playing a game of soccer, time where you and that child connects, and you know what? They will talk to you.
It's interesting you say that, because my youngest son is a very quiet boy, and instead of dropping him at the train station or the bus stop to go to school, I would get in traffic for an hour. It would take him 12 minutes to get to the city.
Yes.
But I would rather sit in traffic with him for an hour and take him to school. And that was the time that we had to connect. He had reached that stage where he'd come home and I'd ask him, so how was your day? Fine. Have you done your homework? Yes. It was just one word answers. And I just made a point to drive him to school every day. And people thought I was crazy.
No.
But it really helped develop our relationship. You're right. You have to carve out the time and not make it a serious discussion.
Because no kid wants to be told, just like me, I don't want you to tell me how I've got to live my life. Forget it. You want to explore the ways yourself. So you establish openings, and then you empower them with their own morals and their own values and the strengths to deal with the great conflicts ahead. I'm not sure what, but the thing is, what you're doing is amazing. That's the first thing. The second thing I'd really strongly advise is that kids are involved in an activity they like. It can be sport, but it can be photography. It can be stamp collecting. I don't care. What it has to be is something they love, where they develop a group of peers who become their community and their allies in the time of disasters that do happen. And this becomes a group which will stop, especially in teenage years, that temptation, that weakness to follow the crowd. They will already have their crowd, ones that care for them, boys and girls. So that's the second thing. And the third thing I suggest is kids actually need to have books. Really, they do. And you give it to them before adolescence and hormones drive them to the point of insanity where they can think nothing except for the opposite sex and they're out of control hormones. If you make story and books part of their life, from even before the babies are born, read to them.
In the womb.
In the womb. And do you know what you do? you create a safe place, a place that they can go to when their mind's exploding, for whatever the reason is. It's a safe place for them to think and work it out, even to rest. You give them that gift, and it's a gift for life.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on board today. Where can people get your books? I know you've also got your book in Braille, you said, you mentioned to me a bit earlier.
Yes, well, it is available in Braille and vision impaired. I was so excited to see these children who have no sight, and how education and reading has given them a pathway into the whole world. But you can get my books in different countries. In Australia, HarperCollins publishes them. In America, it's Kane Miller. But if you look up my name, it'll be on Amazon, on Booktopia. They're just available through the normal, both digital, online, and print versions. But if you find my name, you'll find my books, and you'll also find my heart, because I only ever write with great honesty, because I know kids know a liar. And so when I write for them, I invite them into my life so that they can travel with me, and we hope we become friends.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate you doing this interview, Susanne. And good luck with everything. Keep in touch with me and let me know how everything is going with your writing.
I will. And I'd just like to say I love the work you do. You inspire me. And
thank you.
You know, you do change the world. Thank you so much for this interview.
It's a pleasure. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.